Be a lock to make top 8 if they win here. But certainly a high pressure situation for both of these players, and both playing not the best, the quote unquote best deck of the format, not even the second of the format, but something that's certainly able to take on an angle of the metagame that those best decks weren't able to combat with this weekend.
See a Temple of Silence from Smith, and now there's an Elvish Mystic, so we're underway here.
Yeah, looks like Michael Smith won the die roll. He led off with Temple of Silence, and Elijah Jackson has a turn 1 mana elf off of his forest. Michael's deciding if he wants to kill it this turn. Looks like he may, and it's a Devour Flesh to be able to take out the 1/1.
Yeah, and the Granted Monsters deck is a lot different when it has acceleration as opposed to when it's not, to a point that we kind of harped on last weekend when we saw BBD and CVM along with Dan Cato playing the deck. It's just a much different deck when it can accelerate to its threats as opposed to playing just a pretty fair game of Magic.
Elijah Jackson has a lot of lands in his hand. He plays a Temple of Abandon, scrying. Couldn't really tell if he'd put it on the top or the bottom. And he's going to play a very fair game of Magic here as Michael Smith plays a Godless Shrine untapped on turn 3.
Seems like a Thoughtseize, yeah.
And here's a Thoughtseize to be able to see all of Elijah Jackson's goodies. No more secrets. We see 4 lands and 2 copies of Gore Clan Rampager.
Oh, we'll make it 1 copy of Gore Clan Rampager in a minute. So basically, taking like this hand, I think the Scry stayed on top, so we'll see if there's a Planeswalker or anything kind of hanging out over there. But he's got 2 threats now. He's got a Mutavault, he's got a Gore Clan Rampager, and Rampager isn't going to get here before turn 4.
Looks like Michael Smith is planning to get a little aggressive with his Mutavault, get in a little bit of damage while he can before any of these green or red monsters enter the battlefield. Elijah left with not but a creature and several lands in his hand.
And we could see maybe some pack rat action depending on what Smith's hand looked like now that he knows the path is clear.
That's right.
I think that's what we're going
to see. There is
the
pack rat. You're right. Pack rat enters the battlefield. Elijah knows what's on top. It looked like it was a Stormbreath Dragon.
Indeed.
And so he isn't going to have any action other than a Mutavault until turn 4.
Trouble is brewing here for Mr. Jackson and his green red deck because now he doesn't have a removal spell for Pack Rat, and it looks like Desecration Demon is going to come down. That's another card that's absolutely fantastic in this matchup for Orzhov midrange because take a look at the board. Yep. There's nothing there.
Things aren't going to get much better for Elijah next turn as he is only going to be able to drop his Gore Clan Rampager with a top-decked Elvish Mystic. Not exactly perfect timing for him.
Now, one thing that happened there on the last turn is Jackson looked like he's going to play an Elvish Mystic. Is it looks like Smith had missed a point of damage because had he played his land and then attacks with the Pack Rat, he can threaten the ability to make it a 3/3 by activating Mutavault and then discarding a card. So he only would have scampered in for 1 point of damage, but 1 is better than none.
Right, giving Elijah 21 life points might be relevant as the game moves forward. Michael Smith not really in danger currently, however, games can change quickly in this green-red monsters deck as pretty much every creature in the deck has a huge impact on the board after turn 5.
Yeah, just the big problem here is, again, Desecration Demon's on the table. It's not a card that Green Monsters really has an efficient way of handling. And once this thing is starting to attack, which it is right now, it's actually really, really hard for Jackson to be able to catch up and win the game.
Michael Smith thinks about attacking with the Pack Rat before deciding that, no, just the 6/6 flyer is good enough here after Elijah decides to not sacrifice any creatures to it. Michael's deciding how he wants to proceed here, and he is going to elect to use Last Breath on Elvish Mystic.
Yeah.
And so that is going to remove Elijah's 1/1 once again.
And, I'm okay with that play only because it's just going to keep creatures off the board, and it's just still going to let Desecration Demon, kind of run rampant because Stormbreath Dragon's going to come in, and that's great and everything.
But it also makes his Devour Flesh live, which is going to be a huge boon for Michael Smith. Elijah well on the back foot already, now tapped out with no creatures on the board.
And, the Last Breath play is actually super important there because had that Mystic been laying around, he taps 5 mana to cast the dragon, and he says, okay, I'm going to Last Breath your elf, float a mana. All right, going to cast Devour Flesh now. It's like, all right, activate Mutavault in response, sacrifice that. Now, is the dragon going to win the game? It's rather unlikely because there's a 6/6 demon out there, but to make it so the dragon dies to Devour Flesh right away is really good.
In comes Pack Rat, in comes Desecration Demon. Is there any effects before damage? Does not appear to be so. Elijah falls to 16 from the damage. And still with the Gore Clan Rampager in hand is Elijah. How best to fight out of this situation if you're a green-red aggro deck?
That's kind of the issue here. Is I'm trying to think of creative ways to try to get back into this game. Something along the line of like running mortars, something. But even running mortars takes care of desecration demon because you have to hold them, but it doesn't take care of the pack rat problem. So he's in a rock and a hard place right now where Xenagos is going to come down, and sure, it can make a 2/2 Satyr, but what does pack rat care? And I promise desecration demon doesn't really care either.
Yeah, I mean, it's able to satiate the Desecration Demon. It's an effective way to keep that guy tapped while, oh, by the way, growing it a ton every turn when your opponent has 4 heroes downfalls in their deck. But the Pack Rat doesn't really care about that. So, and here is Pack Rat activating for the first time this game, deciding what to discard, and it is going to be a Swamp. So, a Pack Rat token. Looks like it's going to enter the battle zone for Michael Smith. He is going to have 10 power heading into his untapped step. That's one of the powers of this Orzhov mid-range deck is, as opposed to the mono black devotion deck, where there's a lot of space in between when Grey Merchant is good and when Grey Merchant's bad. There isn't so much space in between any of the creatures in this Orzhov mid-range deck. Blood Baron of Vizkopa, pretty much always good, sometimes backbreaking, whereas Grey Merchant, sometimes bad, oftentimes backbreaking.
Yes, I would agree with that sentiment.
And so Michael Smith looks like he's going to be heading into his attack step, waiting for Elijah to decide if he wants to sacrifice the Satyr to chump block effectively the Desecration Demon.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing here for Xenagos keeps, obviously, Desecration Demon under wraps, but if that was the only thing that Smith had, that would be great. Problem is that he has other things to do with Pack Rat and Mutavault.
Exactly. Michael can win in one way or he can win in another, and he's going to choose to pressure with Pack Rats here.
He's going to go after Xenagos, where he could leave it alive if he wants to, but it's kind of an annoyance. Send one at Xenagos, send one at you, activate Mutavault. That is going to make the rats 3 power. And you see Michael pointing all these things out, so your Xenagos is going to bite the dust, even though it's a nice foil one. It's still in the graveyard.
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't get damage prevented just because it's a foil copy. And so now Elijah, once again, with no permanents on the board, facing down a rather large black army of Orzhov midrange controlled by Michael Smith. He does have 7 lands in play. Let's see if he can put some sort of defense together and perhaps turn the corner. There's another basic land from Elijah Jackson, who's now pondering what to do with the 2 cards he has in hand. Remember, one of those is a Gorklan Rampager, so he could play 4/4 Trampler, although that's not going to match up very well against the impending growing Pack Rats.
Now, I'm not a fan of calling a game over before it is, but as Jackson kind of submits there, it's over.
Yeah.
You're not beating the Demon. You're not beating the Pack Rats. Every card that Michael Smith draws is a Pack Rat. You're not getting out of the hard lock.
Certainly not beating both.
No.
And so Elijah Jackson scoops him up and heads to sideboard with Michael Smith up 1-0 in this 7-1 match between Orzhov Midrange and Green-Red Monsters. They're going to head to the sideboards. And speaking of the sideboards, I have Michael Smith's in front of me, and we're going to see what he is likely to bring in. I would imagine these 3 copies of Lifebane Zombie are high on the list.
Step in the right direction.
As well as 3 copies of Farika's Cure, being able to take down early elves. The Farika's Cure discussion is interesting to me because really the only good target in the deck is mana elves. But that's really what you want to be fighting against in this deck, is slowing them down.
Yeah, I mean, the issue there is, it's really good at taking care of Eldritch Mystic, but it doesn't kill 7 Caryatid for multiple reasons. It's an 0/3. It also has hexproof. Maybe you can catch a Scavenging Ooze, and then maybe you can catch a Boon Satyr, but is it worth it to have cards that actually kill those when the real problem cards are cards like Pelucrano, Stormbreath Dragon, Gorklan Rampager, and the Planeswalkers? That's arguable.
So he also has a copy of Duress in the sideboard and a copy of Pithing Needle in the sideboard. Is that the way you fight Green-Red Monsters?
I do like discard against this deck. Duress is, obviously not as good as Thoughtseize because almost nothing is, but, what's going to end up happening here is, Jackson has 4 Domri, has 3 Xenagos. He has the main deck Garruk. He also has 2 Fleshblood, 2 Mortars, and chances are he'll be boarding in more spells after sideboard, which actually make Duress a better card. The same thing can be said of Python Needle as well. So, there's a decent chance that's the way that I would want to fight him.
Patrick and I were discussing that post-sideboarded games in this format pretty much invariably slow the matchups down because all the matchups tend to be bringing in spells rather than creatures. And that is the case in this matchup as well, as many spells are coming in from the red-green side of things, although Michael's sideboard does have the 3 Lifebane Zombies, and so he's able to turn on the gas a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, he can be more aggressive. He'd also just can present more difficult things for Jackson's deck to answer. Now, one thing that's nice about Lifebane Zombie, if you're on Jackson's side, and there's not a lot of benefits of it, but it having 1 toughness is a positive because he does have 2 copies of Chandra Power Master in his sideboard, and this game should maybe get a little bit grindy, plus he can play Chandra ahead of schedule. So the fact that he can have Chandra to shoot down a Lifebane Zombie, make it so the Desecration Demon can't block without having to sacrifice a creature, maybe catch a Pack Rat, that's a 1/1, because, you know, there can be a scenario where he plays a turn 1 or turn 2 Mana Accelerant, turn 3 Chandra to kill your Pack Rat. Those are scenarios that are actually open, especially because he's on the play. So, you know, Lifebane Zombie is obviously a giant pain, but when you have access to an early Chandra, that's definitely a step in the right direction. Other things Jackson has are 4 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Destructive Revelry, 2 Mysium Mortars, 2 Shocks, 2 Plummets, a Rurik Thar, and then those 2 Chandras. You know, Shock is kind of meh. It can kill an early Pack Rat, can catch a Mutavault, but it really can't do much else. Mysium Mortars is fine, but it kind of falls into the same problem of it can kill some things, but it can't kill other things. Desecration Demon, I'm looking at you, kid. Can't take care of that. Revelry, probably stays at home. I mean, it can't kill Underworld Connections, but I don't think this is a matchup that Connections is really about. Mistcutter Hydra is a big threat, something to do with your mana, but again, I'm not really sure this is what the matchup's about. And then Rurik Thar, as big and bad as it is, costs 6 mana, and if we watch that last game, that's any indication, why not get to 6 mana?
That's exactly right. Do you think that the Mysium Mortars are... You think Elijah knows that he's facing Blood Baron of Vizkopa? I think is the real question.
I think he has to be under the assumption here, not because of any... There's not one real thing that stood out to me outside of the fact that Smith played actual cards Plains.
Yes.
He played the actual card Plains, where, you know, the black decks that splash maybe Temple of Silence, you'll see, you know, mono black, and they've got 3 temples or 4 temples, what have you, and then that's it. But we saw in that particular game where Smith played, you know, Godless Shrine, and he also played a Plains. That's the kind of the dead giveaway that, yeah, I've actually got, you know, Blood Baron, Last Breath, and that version of the deck is what I'm playing. And if Elijah Jackson is informed with the metagame, he'll know exactly what he's up against.
That is the 1 copy of Plains in Michael Smith's deck. So
hey,
dead
it came
giveaway.
in. Yeah, it came in. There it
go.
was. This is an Orzhov deck. This is not Mono Black Devotion. There are actually no Devotion cards. You're not going to find Erebos. Actually, there's 1 Erebos. I apologize. But, you know, you're not going to find multiple copies of Erebos, and there are no copies of Grey Merchant of Asphodel in the main deck.
Right.
Those don't exist.
And he's also not playing Nightveil Spectre, which is the real hallmark of the Devotion decks, to be able to get the requisite amount of Devotion, either blue or black, and no copies of that. Instead, more controlling elements like Last Breath and Ultimate Price in the main deck. So Elijah pondering his opening 7 here, deciding if this is going to be good enough to win him the game. Michael Smith waiting patiently. It looked to me like Elijah had a hand that did have lands and spells, but it looked like it was 3 lands and then no mana accelerants until a turn 3 or 4 play. And so those are the kind of trap hands that get a lot of people. He is deciding to mulligan here.
He will not be trapped by the hand. He's going to send it back. You see Michael Smith is taking a look. He's going to keep. Yep, that's a guy with a Pack Rat.
Yeah. Got the read on that one.
That's an easy keep right there.
Sure.
Yeah.
A quick nod, a little bit of a, yeah, that's all right. And then
I guess I'll keep.
then a look off camera.
Thoughtseize you, Pack Rat you. Have a good day. I know what's going on here. It's not my first rodeo.
Very similar to the Thoughtseize Bitter Blossom play from back in the day.
Yes, I know what's happening.
And then pump it by making a 3 mana, either rat or fairy.
Yeah, it's really cool.
There you go.
It's good interaction. You know, I'd like to say that I hate Pack Rat, but I don't.
No, Pack Rat, I think, is a perfectly, well, it's not a perfectly reasonable card, but I think it's a somewhat reasonable card.
I like that Pack Rat just plays the fun plays. That's my favorite part
Yeah.
about the card. It's just we talked a lot last week about how this deck feels a lot like Blue-Black Fairies, even though it has no blue in it. And this isn't the pure Mono-Black Devotion, but, you know, basically the same concept. But I just like cards that are just like, you have to pass this test. You're just like, I didn't want to take that test. Like, that's too bad. You don't get to make that decision.
Right.
You have to pass the test.
There's a Jace test from way back in the day.
Yeah.
Jace the Mind Sculptor test. There was a Geist test.
Yes. I just like that. It's
The
just like,
Vapor Snag test was a thing for a while.
yeah. You also get to, you know, you get to be the one who says you have to pass the test, too.
Yes.
You know, you're allowed to play Pack Rat.
Being the one giving the test rather than the one taking the test
Yeah.
is much preferred, as we see turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Sylvan Caryatid from Elijah on a 1-lander. So Michael is going to be able to play this. Oh, not a Pack Rat.
Hey, that's a Devour Flesh, and that's actually good enough. It'll take care of the elf. Obviously, you want to leave the better Mana Accelerant and better blocker out there, so Caryatid's going to hang out here. And if you're Jackson, it's time to run off a land or two.
Elijah finds a Domri Raid on top, does not find another mana source, and instead plays Scavenging Ooze.
One thing I will say about these black decks, be it Orzhov mid-range, be it mono black devotion, versions of splash green, whatever, they are very unforgiving if you kind of fumble and stumble. There's an ultimate price.
Ultimate price on the Scavenging Ooze. So, just a forest and a Sylvan Caryatid right now. Ah, there's another Scavenging Ooze.
Had it.
Not really what Elijah's looking for. He would much rather play the Domri Raid that's currently stranded in his hand. Meanwhile, Michael is going to continue making land drops. And it looks like a Desecration Demon might be in our future very soon. He doesn't have white mana, which is a little bit notable, as Blood Baron of Vescopa is currently hanging out in his hand.
But he's got the big problem. This is the same problem that we saw last game. We're going to see it this game, too, of he's not far enough ahead at this point so that when Desecration Demon comes down, it's like, oh, I don't care. Sacrifice a guy. Play a guy pre-combat, sacrifice it, keep attacking you. That's not the situation right now. Now it plays the role of the wall or, all right, I'm going to attack you for 6. And 6 is a lot of damage.
6 is a lot, even in the face of a Domri Raid, which will probably be trying to draw a card this turn at least. Elijah instead found another land on top, which is nice to know is there, but does not go immediately to his hand.
No, I mean, let's keep in mind that there's no guarantee that's a land. That could just be another Planeswalker. It can be a bevy of things that are not helpful here for Jackson. We just know that it's not a creature. Oh, there's another ultimate
price taking out the Scavenging Ooze. So, still no pressure on the board for Elijah. And unless he wants to sacrifice his one source of red mana, it looks like 6 damage is going to rumble into this Domri Raid this turn.
Yeah, I want to see if he cares to kill Domri or if he's just going to go straight ahead. And I think he is going to kill it. Okay. So I thought there was a chance he just might ignore it because it's not actually having a big impact on the game.
Sure.
Whatever 4-mana creature that Jackson plays next turn, assuming the top card of his deck is a land, he can't fight that with Desecration Demon and actually be able to win the fight. And Pelukrinos being a perfect example. That's a 5/5. Desecration Demon is a 6/6. I'm not a math scientist, but loses the fight. So he could have ignored it.
I would have to do the math on that one, but
yes.
That sounds right. Pelukrinos, the World Eater, enters the battle zone for Elijah Jackson.
It's not alive.
It is no longer alive. And while that is in the Heroes versus Monsters duel deck and is a monster, Heroes Downfall is going to take it down. And Mutavault and Desecration Demon rumble in for 8.
And, a lot of people kind of, the way people feel about Desecration Demon kind of comes and goes. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's very, very bad. But, the games where it is good, it is quite good. And, one of the flaws of this Green Monsters deck is that it has a real problem answering a 6/6 flyer unless it gets ahead and gets off to, a certain type of game.
Now, remember last game when we had Pack Rat and Desecration Demon and Xenagos came down?
Now wouldn't be a bad time for Xenagos, actually.
Well, there's a Xenagos for you.
It's fine, but again, it's not great because, now there's a Mutavault that can kind of chase it down a little bit, and, we'll go to the attack step, and this is assuming that Smith has, a box of rocks in his hand that isn't going to do anything, but we know that's not the case as he draws the 1 plane, so now his hand is kind of back on.
Yep. He's able to play this Blood Baron, but that will mean that the Satyr is going to be able to chump block the Desecration Demon again.
So Demon's going to turn into a 7/7 now. And he might even just be comfortable firing Mutavault to start working down Xenagos, but all right, just now you have to beat a Blood Baron too. So this is the kind of issue where had Xenagos come a little bit earlier, he gotten off to a better start. Now he actually plays Xenagos, and he's like, all right, now tap your Demon and put the Demon in the position of, do you want to kill my Planeswalker? Do you want to try to hang back on defense, which you're not allowed to do? And it just makes it difficult. But right now for Smith, given where he's at in the game, things get a little more difficult, but Pelukrinos will try to catch up.
Yeah, I'm no math scientist, but 5/5 is bigger than 4/4.
That's my line. That's my line.
Well, I'm also not a math scientist.
But that's my line. You can't take my line.
Much like Cedric Phillips.
Okay, there you go. I stole a line from someone else. I think it was AJ Soccer, but it's my
fair
line.
Enough.
It's my line.
Well, Pelukrinos is a 5/5. Unfortunately, the Orzhov midrange deck is chock full of elimination spells. But if he doesn't happen to have one in his hand, this Blood Baron isn't going to be able to do anything. The Xenagos is going to be able to just continue pumping out Satyrs.
Yeah, I mean, now he needs a removal spell. Xenagos basically is going to trump the Desecration Demon for now. Assuming that Smith doesn't ever find anything of relevance here. And as you mentioned, Blood Baron can't actually do very much right now.
Yeah, Michael has a lot of live draws in his deck. Not only Pack Rat
Ooh.
or Underworld connections, but it looks like he's going to get a little bit spicy here, trying to get in some damage.
Look at us fire up this Mutavault. This is interesting.
Yeah, so these two are going to try and come in at the Xenagos.
We're trying to get Xenagos down to, wow, what are we doing here?
I'm intrigued, is what I am.
So, Pelucranos is going to eat this? Is there a follow-up play?
This might be Farika's cure. But it
This
is not. It is
another
just
Blood
another
Baron.
Blood Baron. So, at the cost of 1 Blood Baron, we were able to take 2 loyalty off of Xenagos.
I mean, if he really feels like he needs to try that hard to get it off the table, the problem with that is you know, there's no guarantee that Sylvan Carrot is going to be tapped next turn, and Jackson could just play another creature. So, I would be much happier on that turn if I'm Smith just to play the Blood Baron and just pass. I feel like he just threw it away to gain 4 life mostly, and knocks Xenagos down to 1, but 1 isn't none.
Yeah, that turn would have made a lot more sense if he had something like Profit Loss in his
Yeah.
hand.
Profit Loss or Freakus Cure, which again I don't expect to really be in his deck after sideboard, something like that. Maybe he had like a Lifebane Zombie to work it away, but then again, you know, play Lifebane Zombie pre-combat to see exactly what's going on. So, I don't know, we'll see if it comes back to hurt him.
Meanwhile, 4 mana is Elijah Jackson's wheelhouse, and that is going to mean Chandra Pyromaster is going to enter the battle zone. Chandra is the M13 All-Star. It is likely going to use its +1 ability on the way down, although it could use its 0 ability, which is very Jace-like, in my opinion.
It is
being able
powerful.
to not draw a card, but add a card advantage unit.
A unit.
A unit of card advantage. Being able to exile the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. Chandra is going to tick up and ping the Blood Baron and ping Michael as well.
No blocksies allowed. No blockers ever.
In comes a Satyr, and in comes an Elvish Mystic. So Michael, down to the 1 card in hand, it would appear. Draws for his turn, up to 2. He has a ton of live draws still. He's got Underworld Connections. Any kill spell, Hero's Downfall, or Ultimate Price is going to be able to take out the Pelucranos and definitely turn things way in his advantage, because he'll be able to much more easily attack the Planeswalkers rather than use the Hero's Downfall on a Planeswalker. Although I guess it could just take out the Xenagos.
Yeah, I mean, I would be inclined to want to take down the Xenagos, but I mean, there's definitely a decision to be made on what you would want to do with a drawn Hero's Downfall at this point. You know, you can make an argument if you want to take down Chandra, because that's a card advantage engine at this point. You can make an argument if you want to take down Pelucranos, so that your Blood Baron can actually start getting into the red zone. So, and your Mutavault can get in as well, because Elvish Mystic, small, 1/1. So, we'll see what Smith drew this turn.
Yeah, Elijah Smith hasn't really had a kind top of his library this game, although he's in no rush. Again, we were talking about the Blood Baron attack with the Mutavault play, and play out another Blood Baron. Had he not done that, he would have 2 Blood Barons in play this turn against the current board, which is a much more advantageous position.
Yeah, it's just a scarier threat. And again, he didn't accomplish anything by throwing that Blood Baron away. That's the most, you know, disconcerting thing.
Right, the
just
only
knocking
difference,
Xenagos to 1.
Exactly. The only difference is that Xenagos would have 3 loyalty
Yeah.
rather than 1.
Well, there's not really a big difference between the two when all you're doing is pumping out Satyr tokens. You also notice, too, that, and you also notice that, you know, Smith didn't even go to his attack step. So the Demon Trigger didn't go on the stack, and as a result, the Satyr token is still there. He just passed the turn back a little hastily. So now you see Jackson trying to decide exactly what he wants to do with his Chandra.
Looks like he's not terribly happy with the card that he's drawn for the turn.
Well, that's okay. You get another shot at it. Now, the big issue here with Chandra in this matchup, you see some mana. Looks like it's going to be added to the pool here, so it's going to add 4, some combination of green or red. But with Chandra, the ultimate doesn't really ever come into play.
Looks like he's trying to use that mana to fight with Pelucranos.
There's potential for that. We'll see.
So he has 4 mana in his pool, and he can add another 5 mana to be able to fight the Blood Baron.
He can do 4, and then he's got 5 lands, so that's 9. And then he's got a Mystic and a Caryatid, so that's 11.
So he could fight for 5 here.
Yeah. Get him, Hydra.
Making a 10-10 Pelucranos. Now, is a 10-10 Pelucranos bigger than an 8-8 Desecration Demon?
I'll have to check with my people.
Okay. He only did it for 9. He kept his creatures untapped. Harder question is it bigger than a 9? But this one He has the two different varieties of art, by the way, and this one is the Heroes versus Monsters one that decided to grow into a 9-9. And he is going to get into the red zone with Michael Smith at 27, thanks to the fight, gaining him 4 more life.
Yeah, this game has taken a turn.
Yeah, this game has not gone Michael Smith's way, as that Xenagos effectively put the brakes on Michael Smith's whole game plan.
You got to remember, too, I mean, looking back at the beginning of this game, Elijah Jackson plays turn 1 Elvis Mystic, turn 2 Carroted, no second land, plays a Scavenging Ooze, it dies, plays a Scavenging Ooze, it dies, starts to finally draw a little bit of land, but he wasn't doing anything of relevance, and now, fast forward to where we are now, and it's like you can't even imagine that Jackson took a mulligan.
Yeah. Michael Smith's early elimination spells wouldn't even help him out of this situation. He used Last Breath and he used Devour Flesh, and so neither of those really able to help deal with a 9-9 Hydra that he's staring down, although other elimination spells in his deck, 4 Heroes Downfall, 2 Ultimate Price, would be able to. Although I wouldn't imagine the slow roll is taking place here. I think that those would have been much quicker on the stack.
Gonna fire up a Mutavault. Satyr token. Looks like it's probably happy to bite the dust here. Something is gonna tap down the Desecration Demon, just deciding what it's gonna be. Actually kind of like Satyr token to have on offense right now.
Yep, and he indeed decides to sacrifice the 1-1 instead of the 2-2 to tap down the Desecration Demon.
Mutavault will not be attacking, so just pass the turn back. Can play a little bit of defense, not all that well though. I mean, we're trading with Satyr tokens right now. There's a Temple of Abandon. All right.
And so Temple of Abandon combined with Chandra Pyromaster effectively means that he can play the top card of his library, although he decided to scry that one to the bottom of his deck.
Looks like he might be going to the attack step here. Oh no, Jackson. Again, when you have 2 Planeswalkers, you've got some, you have a lot of decisions.
You do have a lot of options, especially with Chandra. You can see where you're at pre-combat, although if he's not going to use the +1, he would use the 0 here.
Yeah.
And both of those seem to be abilities you'd want to use pre-combat.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the sequencing right now, just because I think if you're going to do anything, you want to start with. I'm okay with starting with the Scry to see what the top card is, and then I would want to actually Chandra first to see what exactly I find, and then with Xenagos, do I need to use the mana ability or the Satyr making ability? So he's already used the Satyr ability on Xenagos, so now Chandra's left. That's the only thing left to do this turn.
Yep. And in come the 2 Satyr tokens as well as the Pelukronos. We'll see what Michael Smith decides to do. He has a Mutavault, which will be able to trade with a Satyr. Not a trade that he is terribly excited by.
Yeah, I think he might be in front of Pelukronos, yeah, because that thing is attacking for 9 right now.
So he does chump block the Pelukronos. Michael Smith falls to 11, and Chandra is going to use the +1 to deal a damage, setting Michael Smith to 10. Elijah Jackson also at 11 life, but under much less strain.
Yeah, I mean, Smith is playing at the top of the deck, and obviously he has not found anything of relevance at this point. And don't forget, the Orzhov deck or, Mono Black Devotion, they don't have access to a Wrath effect. I guess he could get a little spicy with a Merciless Eviction, but we know that does not exist in his 75.
Yep. Desecration Demon trigger
you can say
on the stack. I was trying.
DDT.
Very hard. It's easy for me to say.
Yeah, DDT.
DDT trigger on the stack, and
no, you
Sylvan
did it wrong.
Added.
DDT Desecration Demon trigger, not DDT trigger.
Well, it's like ATM machine.
Yeah, that's what you did wrong.
I understand.
All right.
I apologize.
All right. I'm glad we got it.
Sylvan Added, that's been in play since turn 2, is going to hit the bin to be demon food, to be able to amass more satyrs, keep the offense going. Speed up the clock a little bit.
Can we get an ultimate here with Chandra? Even though there's nothing to ultimate in the deck, I just kind of want to see it fired off. He's never done it before. See a lethal attack here. So Elijah Jackson's going to tie it up. And seriously, a game that if you had asked me after turn 3 who was going to win, I would have
guessed the player who didn't miss his second and third land drops.
I was going to say I was going to slap you in the face.
Oh.
I don't know why I would do that, though. That seems completely unnecessary.
Very rude of you.
I know. I apologize. I don't know.
I'm not Andrew Shroud.
I know. That's true. That's true. He deserved it. Don't make a bet that bad. He made a terrible bet.
What was the bet?
He felt that Magic Online daily events were not going to be back until March.
Ooh.
March? Really?
Come on.
That is a horrible, horrible line by Andrew Shroud. And as such, he got the back of my hand.
And he got duly punished.
That's right. The back of my hand.
Moving on.
I feel kind of bad, actually.
Do you really?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Especially if that's on film somewhere. Please tell me that's on film.
Yeah, it was filmed.
Nice.
Yeah, Jarvis Shoe filmed it.
Oh,
yeah,
sweet.
That's great. You could probably Google me slapping him in the face. I don't know. Whatever you guys want to do. At
Well,
the end of the day, I'm very surprised that game was won by Green Red Monsters.
Absolutely.
Because nothing went to plan there.
Yeah.
Actual nothing. Like, Scavenging Ooze, not a great card in this matchup. The Mana Acceleration is obviously good, but he only had a 1-land hand. And then the Planeswalkers showed up, and we talked about in Game 1 how Zen and Ghost can actually just, trump a Desecration Demon for a really long time. And then it ended up, coming to fruition. But you have to look back at that attack with the Blood Baron to try to... Again,
piece
I don't
something
really...
together.
Yeah,
I
again,
don't know
just
if there's anything that he really could have done, though, is the problem, because eventually the draws were still going to be the same. And imagine there's still a Blood Baron in play in the same situation.
Yeah, but I think that, just by there being another Blood Baron, so there's 2 Blood Barons out there, it just changes maybe the way that, Jackson plays the game. Just because it's there and it's a powerful card.
Sure.
Just the fact that it exists maybe changes the way that he plays the game. Is there a way that he can go up to 30 life and I go below 10? Or, something crazy where he can outthink himself instead of just, basically throwing it away. And it's like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. That doesn't weigh into the equation. So, maybe Smith realizes that he made a misstep and, we'll just move on and try to get this match and then, with any luck, be able to draw into the top 8 next round.
And he did not have the Pack Rat, as you suggested earlier.
Good card.
How important is having an early Pack Rat in this matchup against Red-Green Monsters?
I think it's important when you're on the play as the black deck. I think it's much less good when you're on the draw as the black deck. It's not the end-all, be-all. I think you want removal in that situation. But when you're on the play, maybe you can steal one, something of that nature. But, again, this isn't a matchup where Pack Rat really shines. It's perfectly fine, of course, because it's Pack Rat. But this isn't the matchup where you play Pack Rat on turn 2 and they just are dead.
And it's just game over,
yeah. They've got removal. They've got mortars. They can have a Flesh Blood draw. They can have a Dom redraw or something to be able to take care to be able to take care of it.
Elijah Jackson is going to mulligan to 6 here. Michael Smith, I believe, kept his opener, so he's looking at it a little bit less confidently than he did Game 2's opener.
But he'll be on the play.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a good spot to be in. I think, what he wants to do this game? He wants to start off with this cool card called Thoughtseize.
Yes.
That is what I would recommend.
Turn 1 Thoughtseize.
Well, nothing
Turn
else
2
matters.
Bitter Blossom.
Nothing else matters after that.
Pack Rat.
Yeah,
both of them are going to 6.
He's mulliganing for Thoughtseize. Maybe not.
Now, is this, as you mentioned, it's not that important in this matchup, so you would not suggest trying to find a Pack Rat.
No.
You wouldn't throw back a, let's call it, keepable hand.
Just to try to find
just
a Pack
to find
Rat?
A
No,
Pack Rat
I wouldn't do that, no. I think there's a nice range of hands that you can end up keeping in this matchup. You're looking for, obviously, a removal-heavy hand. You'd like to get a clock started. The big card that you want in this matchup is Desecration Demon. That is, I don't want to say it's the most important card, but it's a very important card in this matchup. And if you can find one, then you're off to a fantastic start, and you can go from there. So we'll see what ends up happening, because he's on 6 cards right now, and maybe going to 5. We'll see.
One card that would have made the world of difference in both games, actually, he was at a healthy life total for a long time in both of these games, is Underworld Connections.
Yes.
We haven't seen an Underworld Connections trigger yet.
Yes.
And so it would have been a great top deck in either game, and it hasn't had any impact on this game, and often doesn't have an impact on the Red-Green Monsters matchup. But the way that these games have played out, things have sort of been just barely one-up trumped. Like your Desecration Demon is just one-up trumped by a Xenaghost, which is one-up trumped by the Pack Rat.
Yeah. I think that if he had found an Underworld Connections at some point in that game, we're speaking about a completely different narrative,
of
but
course. Didn't
find that. You see Jackson's going to take a mulligan down to 5 here. Smith looks happy enough with his 6. And, that was the card that would have probably, salted it away, because he would have the Desecration Demon, and as you mentioned, Xenaghost would have won up that, but he would have likely found an answer to that. And then we're, again, talking about something completely different, but instead, Underworld Connections has not shown its face yet during this match.
With both players mulliganing, one player to 6 and one player to 5, the first place you look is the card advantage and the 1-for-1s, and the black-white deck is chock full of them. The Thoughtseize and the Duress stick out first and foremost to me as ways to punish mulligans even greater, and Underworld Connections is a way to dig out of that, whereas Adam's Domery Raids are the best way to get pure card advantage out of his deck.
Well, Jackson overcame one mulligan in the last game. Oh, no.
See if he can do it
no.
again as Elijah keeps his 5.
Oh, no.
Here's a Duress.
Whew.
So Duress is going to find targets. We see Plummet, Mizium Mortars, Chandra, Gore Clan Rampager, and Temple of Abandon.
You know, it's the situation here where it's like, I think you have to keep, which sucks.
Yeah.
But I think you actually have to. Now, this is very telling that Chandra gets taken. Because what this means, like, if he had Pack Rat, he'd just take Missing Mortars, right? Or if he had Desecration, he would just take Plummet and not care.
But instead, he has Underworld connections and wants to take away Elijah's card advantage engine.
Yep.
And so Temple of Abandon is going to scry to the bottom, meaning he did not find land number 2 as the second to the top card of the library. Elijah may have top decked a land. As we see another untapped Godless Shrine here into Pack Rat.
This is a bold strategy, hoping that your opponent doesn't draw a land, when you could have just taken the Missing Mortars.
And he decides to. He is comfortable winning this game with, or trying to win this game with Underworld Connections advantage, as Mizium Mortars takes down the Pack Rat. Temple of Silence is, however, the third land of the game for Michael Smith. He will decide to leave the card on top, and there's another Pack Rat. So he wasn't worried about the Mizium Mortars killing the first Pack Rat because he had the second.
Okay.
Or as you like to say, had it.
Yeah, had it. Had the rat. See, Smith is going to untap. He'll take a draw.
And he's able to untap with Pack Rat, which, as you mentioned, isn't game over.
Oh, okay. Well, he has every Pack Rat in the book.
Right.
Okay.
Not making a token, instead casting a Pack Rat.
Now, I will say the no attack there, I hate. Because if he trades his Mutavault for the Pack Rat, I'm going to run around the building and take a lap. It's great. It's the best news possible. And now he's attacking. He doesn't block either. No. You have to trade there. You have to be thrilled.
Did Elijah's sacrificing? He's sacrificing his mana for attempts at damage. You're keeping Elijah off of 4 mana there. And instead, Michael is happy to just try to race here, discarding a card, probably mid-combat, although possibly not.
Maybe I'm just too aggressive. I don't know.
He's going to keep up Hero's Downfall. Okay. So he keeps his 3 mana available to be able to either Hero's Downfall or make a Pack Rat at end of turn. Seeing what Elijah chooses to do. Elijah's going to choose to take 2 damage and cast a 4/4 Gore Clan Rampager. That's not a card that I would consider using Hero's Downfall on.
No, I mean, this is the situation to me. Hero's Downfall is going to take care of the Rampager. You just make rats until your opponent submits. That's all you do. Every card that you draw from this point forward is a rat. Nothing else you draw actually matters. Every card is textless, and you just rat him until he can't take it anymore.
Just rats on rats on rats
yes.
for the rest of the games. V. Mauschwitz wrote a great article on Pack Rat strategy.
Heed his advice.
Yes. Unless the card in your hand is going to lead to more rats or immediately win you the game.
Just more rats.
More rats. A Lord every turn is not terrible.
There's another Gore Clan Rampager.
So another Gore Clan Rampager comes down, and it looks like Devour Flesh is going to keep it off of the board. Elijah goes to back up to 14. And we are where we started. Now, he does know that Elijah has a useless Plummet in his hand.
Yeah, that's one of the other cards in the grip.
And so future Desecration Demons are almost certainly not going to come down.
Yep.
And so he just wants to keep Elijah's board clear so that Domery Raid can't fight off a rat or something weird like
basically.
that. And so he's content to come in for 4 these last 3 turns.
Can't be afraid to make a rat from Michael Smith. It's unbeatable.
Michael's deciding now whether he wants to play a land untapped and play Underworld Connections to be able to basically draw a card and make a rat every turn.
Sure.
I think it's reasonable to play the land tapped and pass, and then play the Underworld Connections next turn, or make a rat at the end of the turn. See where you're at.
See what Smith can do here. Again, we know he has the Plummet in his hand, and that's really about it. He's staring down a barrel of rats right now.
Yep, he does have a Xenagos as well.
Yeah, Xenagos is it's fine in the situation. It's not exciting,
But
though.
as we saw in Game 1, Xenagos is able to trump a Desecration Demon, but not trump Pack Rats.
Yeah.
2/2 Satyrs are smaller than XX Rats.
There's a Domri.
So Domri Raid is going to instead search for another way to change the math here. Domri does not find what it's looking for.
So now a rat will be made.
Blood Baron of Viscopa is going to become a rat. And these rats are 3/3s. They are able to become 4/4s should Michael choose to use one of their activated abilities mid-combat. Elijah is only at 10, so he's going to have to throw a Mutavault under the tires in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time for a little trip to the red zone.
Michael deciding if there's anything he wants to do before he starts his attack step.
Yeah, so we'll see where all of them are going.
Looks like they're all coming at Elijah. In come the 3/3 rats. Oh, wait a moment. They're 4/4 rats.
They are 4/4 rats.
And so Elijah falls to 2. And there's a 4/4 rat untapped, as well as a dead Mutavault.
It's a swarm.
It is.
It's a swarm of rats. What do they call? Is that what they call a group of rats? A swarm?
We've had creature group name discussions before.
I know that. I just want to confirm.
I believe it's a swarm, yes.
Okay. It's not like a cackle.
That would be pretty good.
A cackle of rats. Either way.
A chittering of rats?
Yes. Either way, Michael Smith is going to win this match. You see his friends pat him on the back. He looks like he might be in our elimination rounds here with Orzhov midrange defeating Elijah Jackson and a whole bunch of mulligans.
Yep.